It's time to get the inside info on BYU with Cougar insider Mitch Harper of KSLSports.com on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
They call him the GOAT of all things BYU. They call him the legend of Cougarville. They call him the king of all Cougars. They call him the court jester of all things Cougar Nation. What other things can I call you, Mitch? I mean, you've got them all. Mitch Harper joining us now. How you doing, Mitch?
That's quite the introduction, Hans. I appreciate that. I'm happy to be on. It was quite the weekend in Lubbock. The town was not the greatest, but the stadium was really impressive. I got to say, Texas Tech is invested into their football team, and it's working out quite well for them.
Oh, man, the community is incredible. They support the place, but let's be honest, man, the brown grass. Did you park in that parking structure that's tagged with all the graffiti?
I did, yes.
That's crazy, man.
The Raider garage.
How does anything great and successful actually thrive here? It's kind of impressive. And did you pick up on the manure smell? It was like a mink farm smell pretty much everywhere you went. When
I was leaving the stadium, it stood out, but even in the morning a little bit at college game day, there were just hints of you get a sudden whiff of some manure smell. It's just like, where did that emerge from? Yes, it was often. It was weird.
I checked my upper lip like 5 times. I'm like, is that me? Like, what exactly is that? And then I told Lloyd the story. So, Mitch, that overpass that goes from the parking structure over to the stadium?
Yes.
Somehow I stepped in a big load of dog poo and had dog poo all over my shoe. So I'm sitting in the booth with, Greg and everybody. And I'm like, oh, what is that smell? And it was on my shoe. So,
wow.
Really a rough place, but an incredible support system, great fans, a beautiful stadium. Now it's got great history with Patrick Mahomes, who came back and he ignited the place. But overall, Mitch, give me your thoughts on how that game played out.
I thought it showed that there's still a pretty big gap between BYU and top 10 teams. And I think one of the big things that I come away with from that game is the nice thing, whatever happens this year, and obviously BYU's got everything still in front of them with the Big 12 championship game, but they have a program that they have to go chase when it comes to roster construction, because even in revenue sharing era that's going to go forward this upcoming year in 2026, Texas Tech's not slowing down. They are going to pay at a high level for players, and BYU has to, and other programs in the Big 12, but BYU especially, who's been very well resourced and stepping up at a much greater level than they ever have in their past, they still got to go to a higher level to take down a program like Texas Tech, who's getting some of the best athletes in the country in football and really all their sports. You saw it in that game on Saturday when they had a timeout. They highlighted, Chris Anderson, the basketball player, the star softball player. Her name escapes me right now, but, they're paying a premium. And Texas Tech, it was kind of like a showcase moment of what they're doing and how they're operating, with Cody Campbell being the face of it all as far as, rallying the boosters and the donors together. It's working, and it's not slowing down. And, they have a chance to maybe be the top dog in the Big 12. And BYU is going to always be a really good team, but I think there's still that pretty big gap between what BYU's investing into its roster and someone like a Texas Tech. So, but I really would be curious to see if BYU could get that rematch with Texas Tech. But a lot's going to have to change, because I thought offensively BYU was at times felt hesitant and scared at times, and a little bit afraid of Texas Tech's defense, which they were dubbing the best since 2023 when they faced Texas. So disappointing effort, I thought, by BYU. The defense showed up, but I think big picture-wise it shows that they got to continue to invest more than ever before to get a type of roster that Texas Tech assembled.
All right, let's get into some personnel news here, Mitch. Can you shed any light on Justin Kirkland? Because it feels like that's, to this point, it's kind of the letdown of the year, because he was expected to be such a big piece of that defensive front. Help BYU fans understand what's going on there.
Yeah, he's been out since the Utah game, and what's interesting with Kirkland is that he's only played in 4 games this year, and there's a blanket waiver with players that they can appear in postseason games and it doesn't count towards their eligibility. And, could there be a situation where he doesn't play the rest of the regular season, and if you get to a Big 12 championship game, a playoff, or a bowl game, then he could play again, and you could still have the chance to come back because he has the opportunity, if he was to redshirt, that he could come back next season because I do believe that this year has been very tough on him. Even when he showed up in the Colorado game, he wasn't full strength, and he's still been dealing with the knee injury that limited him and kept him out of fall camp. And you wonder if that's kind of maybe the thought process there of where things, with 3 games left, it's just tricky because that interior, the defensive line, outside of Keanu Tanavasa and John Talmoy-Peau, it's very light in terms of depth because after those two, if you don't have Kirkland and you don't have Anisi Purcell, you're going to Kafusi Pafoke from Weber State, a grad transfer, and then a true freshman, Ulavai Fetuli, who showed some good signs in fall camp. But you're chasing a Big 12 championship game. You need to have your key guys that you can trust snap after snap if they get called upon into action. So it's a difficult spot, and that's going to be one with Kirkland to monitor. But him officially getting removed from the depth chart is never a positive sign because trends have shown that when BYU does that going into a week, they're not expecting that player to play. If they think there's maybe a chance a player will go, they'll still leave him on the depth chart. But when they're just removed altogether, kind of gives you a sign that they're not expecting that player to play this week. But it leaves still open the opportunity to play in the postseason if, in fact, that's kind of the path where they're thinking maybe a red shirt for Justin Kirkland.
It's a heartbreaker, man, because I was really anticipating him and Keanu Tanavasa being the patrollers on the interior. And, Keanu's picking up a lot of double teams. There's no question. I mean, there's a lot of focus put on moving Keanu out of there. But whatever he's at, 15 tackles, 16 tackles, and 1 sack, and a couple of TFLs, you would hope that Keanu could really push in through these next 3 games and be a difference maker. I was hoping that we would call his name 3 or 4 times against Texas Tech and that he'd be an interior nightmare because you need him to be an interior nightmare. And you're right, Noah Nisi Purcell. I was calling the true freshman's name on Saturday between Nusi Taumapeo and a couple of other guys that are on the field trying to get some reps, and it's like, geez, man, that could be a problem down the stretch. Even though BYU's defense wasn't the problem, it's something that I'm really paying attention to.
It definitely is, and Purcell is someone that's been very underrated because he played in that Iowa State game, had a sack, and has been a really good performer coming from Southern Utah. You think back to the Arizona game, he was out in that one, and BYU had some struggles, and he was out this past week against Texas Tech and still not listed on the depth chart this week. So that is a banged-up position group heading down the stretch run for BYU. And Talmoy-Peau and Tanavasa are clearly the top 2 guys, but if you want to give them a breather, you don't really have that luxury because there's a pretty big drop-off from those 2 to the guys that would be projected to be the backups behind them going into this week.
Another spot that I worry about that is thin and banged up, L.J. Martin had 16 touches in that game against Texas Tech between the ground and the air, 10 carries and 6 receptions for 30 yards. L.J. Martin is somebody that I need to see 30 touches in order for this team to be as productive as it can be, 30 healthy touches. LJ, when he was in that first quarter, 45 yards rushing in that first quarter, Mitch. Like, I was looking at this thinking, all right, man, this is on pace to be a nice 150, 160, and they can control some pace and they can keep in this game. 22 yards through the other 3 quarters. So LJ Martin is critical because I'm not seeing it from Preston Rex. I'm not seeing it from Enoch Nawahine. I'm not seeing it from Javessa Dumuni. And obviously we're not seeing Sione Moa come back anytime soon. So help BYU fans internalize it, understand it. How banged up is L.J. Martin? How much can he really contribute coming up this weekend against TCU? And what do you expect from them?
I thought I thought it was noteworthy too in the opening drive of the third quarter when the two touches to a running back to open that quarter after BYU's defense got a 3-and-out. The two running back touches were to Preston Rex, and you felt like in that moment where maybe there's a little brief window where you feel like you might be able to get some momentum because that was lacking throughout the entire game, and they didn't turn to LJ. And LJ did play on that drive, but I just thought, why are they not going to LJ Martin? And I even asked Kalani on the health of LJ after that game, and Kalani just said, kind of danced around it a little bit in terms of health, but this team goes as far as LJ takes them. And if LJ, and I think you make a great point, that number, 30 healthy touches has got to be the benchmark for this team because Bear looked like a true freshman, and I think that's to be expected. He's going to have those moments, and I think he will bounce back. But LJ's that steady force that no matter who he faces, he's going to get his when he's healthy. And when he's not healthy, you have days like Saturday where maybe he has that early on where he feels a little fresh after 2 weeks without getting hit and building up some excitement for that Texas Tech game, and then over the course of the game, it wears off and where they can't turn to him. And that's going to be a big area to watch, I think, for this TCU game is the workload for LJ Martin because it's going to be a cold game, weather conditions. You want to just maybe make this thing as quick as possible and run that football, but you don't have other options besides LJ Martin at running back. You just don't right now. Preston Rex could be a nice pass catcher out of the backfield, and he's shown that in moments this season. But running the football, I don't think you've got another option that can get you 10 carries that you feel confident that player is going to be able to move forward and get positive yardage. And that's concerning. And the Texas Tech's ability to completely erase Baron Bachmeier and his success up the middle was very noteworthy too. I mean, they just took that away completely. Yeah. And so it was a non-starter. And, maybe it's just a case of they played maybe the best defensive front, not only the Big 12, but college football. I think there's an argument to be made there. But this one's going to be critical. Kalani referenced it as circle the wagons game. They got to circle the wagons around LJ Martin because if they want to be the Big 12 champion, he's got to be good, and he's got to be the best running back in the Big 12. And to this point, until that injury against Iowa State, he was. And they need him back as soon as possible. He was back, but they need him to be completely healthy, the guy that he was earlier in the season.
Mitch Harper, our BYU insider, joining us for a few more minutes. Mitch, I don't know what to make of Parker Kingston at times. Going into that game, I said BYU has to be all square, if not +1 in the turnover margin. And as soon as he fumbled that punt after a really nice defensive stop, my heart sank. My guts kind of fell out. I thought, you can't do this. Like, you just can't. Not in this stadium, not against this team. You can't have that mistake there. I think it's his third muff punt on the year, if I'm not mistaken. You can correct me on that, Mitch. But your thoughts on Parker Kingston as a punt returner and also as a receiver? It just feels like there's times where I want to just hug and kiss the guy and tell him he's the world to this team. And then there's times it's like, dang it, man. Your thoughts on his kind of inconsistencies, but overall, he is critical to this team, is he not?
He is. He's huge to this team. And, when I think you saw the struggles when you stay at the wide receiver unit, JoJo Phillips, he made his return. It was a lackluster day from JoJo. I mean, some of these receivers did not help Bear Bachmeier, even the Chase Roberts deep ball. He probably should have caught that. His hands are on it, as he put it. He should have caught that ball. So these receivers didn't help the cause for Bear, but Parker in particular, it's been a little bit of Jekyll and Hyde this season. I think the problem that punt returner for BYU is that the backup option, Tiger Bachmeier, struggled mightily earlier in the year. You think back to that Colorado game. I mean, that was kind of a mess where he didn't know where he was on the field. And I don't know if you have another option that you turn to. I think Cannon DeVries, a true freshman, he was good in some punt return action against Portland State. But again, it's you're getting to that point where you're chasing a title. You don't want to turn to true freshmen that haven't done it week after week. So you got to continue to roll with Parker Kingston, because I think we've seen with Kalani in moments like that, and he has referenced that the muff punt and the shank by Sam Vanderhart quite a bit since Saturday.
Many times.
That drives him up the wall because you've heard it, Hans. I mean, the program is in these guys' hands, and to muff a punt, that was not forgivable. And typically, I think BYU would have said, okay, go to the next guy, but it was not very good when Tiger took over earlier in the year, where it was kind of open competition after that Stanford game, and Parker was having his struggles, and you kind of chalked it up to Parker was banged up in fall camp. He wasn't fully healthy yet to open the season. And then when he gets full strength, as Kalani pointed out with that West Virginia game, he really hit his stride, and it's been pretty consistent up until that muff against Texas Tech. And, you wonder, too, if BYU just felt like it was a little bit of the stage was too big for this team. Because it surprised me that they were not as competitive. I thought that BYU would have been competitive in that game, and even Kalani pointed to there was nothing that Texas Tech threw at them, both defensively and offensively, that caught BYU off guard. It almost just felt like nerves got the best of BYU, which was so surprising because this team's played and program has played in some really big games the past few years and big opportunities, whereas Tech was the team that was kind of new to the scene and playing in a big game with so much on the line. They hadn't done that in 17 years, so that was disappointing. But I think you got to continue to go with Parker Kingston at punt return and just kind of understand, that's part of the deal with him because he's far and away their best option at punt returner, and he's one of their best receivers as well in that receiver unit.
Mitch, thanks for your time, brother, and we'll see you coming up on Saturday. Again, another night kick against TCU. My anxiety is pretty sky high over all of it. TCU is probably looking at some Texas Tech stuff, but TCU can't do defensively what Texas Tech did, especially across the front. But we'll see you Saturday, buddy.
See you Saturday, Hans. Looking forward to it.
Appreciate it. There you go. Mitch Harper, our Cougar insider, does a fantastic job here